Welcome back to Hot Rod Guy Garage. This has been another episode on 66 Mustang. So follow me along through the intro. We'll see what we get into. Alright guys, so there's been a lot going on in the background. And a couple of other videos that y'all probably have not seen yet. So I've been busy on the 66. So let me flip around. We'll go over what I've done. And yeah, it's been busy and hectic, so let me get to it. So let's start out with the obvious. I've got the rear end out of it. I got all that under there kind of cleaned up. I put some torque box reinforcement plates in the Fox body rear half, just for giggles. I've got the front end tore back apart, as far as the fenders and wheels are off of it. I've got some parts waiting in the background for the front suspension. They're sitting over there. Got some rear shocks. I've got a seat right here. Our roll cage is sitting right there. But to get this roll cage in here, I've got to get some seat height, guys. I mocked my race seat up in the 65 over here, and my head is in the headliner. So that tells me that I'm going to have to get that seat down to floor level in order for me to get my head, my big old head up in here with the roll cage. So guys, this video is going to be about putting the roll cage in it. So first we got to get a seat mounted. We got to get these seat bases cut out of the car. I'm going to go ahead and cut both of them out. I'm only putting the driver's seat in it, but why I leave the extra weight in the passenger side. And yes, I know they stiffened up the unibody structure, but so will this roll cage. So we're not really losing anything. So we gotta get this seat base out of here. We gotta get all the flanges off, get the floor cleaned up underneath. And I'll show you a good reason why putting floor pan patches in the car and not taking these seat bases out might not be a smart decision. So in my impatientness to do things, I went ahead and just hacked this thing out of here. As you can see under there, she's pretty crusty. Got lots of dirt. As you can see, Ford did not paint this from the factory. There is no kind of rust proofing on these things, guys. So I gotta get these flanges off here. Let's get this floor cleaned up. Let's get it rust treated, wire brushed, and all that good stuff. And go from there, guys. But just a quick reminder, Kentucky Mustang did send us a discount code, and that will be down in the description below. So if you need any classic Mustang parts, guys, check them out. So let me get busy. Well, I think now I have enough room for my seat. I'm still waiting on my seat brackets, but I sat in the car and it feels a lot better. I got about 5 inches of headroom to the roof with it sitting flat on the floor. The seat brackets will bring it up about 2 inches. So we should be good once I get this thing, the brackets on it, then I move it around and get it mounted. And then we can work on getting our main hoop in the car. I've still got to take out that other hump over there just for weight savings. So I'm going to work on that in the background and get that second floor hump out of it for the seat riser. Get that side cleaned up, and by tomorrow all this rust killing stuff will have done its job thoroughly. We can come in here and come wire brush this floor, spray a little paint on it, and then we can get our seat mounted. So it's the next day, and I got that second seat hump out of the car, get it all wire brushed, and our rust killer stuff sprayed on there. It's all turned black. Everything looks pretty decent. Same with the driver's side, it looks pretty decent. I come in here last night and welded up a couple little holes in the floor. There was a couple of small rust holes under the seat bases, but I welded them up by holding a piece of copper on the bottom side of them and filling them in with weld. If I knew I was going to be at this point, I would have put half floors in this car. But we're at this point now, and the front and rear halves have been fixed, so I didn't have no choice but to fix under the seat bases. So let me flip it around. I'll show you where I'm at and what we have to do to go from here. So as you can see, I have got the seats set in the car, and I had pulled the center line here to make sure this seat was somewhat straight in the car. And I moved it back to where I sat in the car pretty comfortably. I measured on the 65 over here how far the steering wheel protruded, which was about 14 inches from the dash. So I had to work off some variables here of not having a column in the car or pedals. So I done some measurements and I set some stuff on the floor and kind of estimated where the steering wheel was. And this is the seat position I come up with. And this is going to be very important. You can't put a roll cage in a car unless you got your seats in it, because there is a very specific spec for distance here along with your door bars. So I've got this mocked up. I'm ready to mark my floor, drill my mounting holes here on the seat bases, and then I'll come back and drill the floor. I'll just put a couple bolts in it for now, because there's some more stuff we'll have to do to legally mount this seat for a race car. But for now, for a good mock-up, that's where it's going to be. So building a car that's actually legal to race at most major racing organizations is quite the chore, guys. But make sure you read your rule book before you start. So I've got this roughly mocked up. I'm ready to get this seat kind of stuck in the car loosely, where I will get back in it and kind of estimate where everything's at. And if everything's good, we can start on the main hoop. So we got our mounting holes drilled. We got a couple bolts stuck through the front two holes. Everything seems to be all right. So when you start mocking up the main hoop. All right, and I've got our bar stuck up in there. It is obviously a little too tall. So I've got it kind of mounted, stuck up in there. It's jammed against the roof up there, but we have to be within 6 inches of the back of this seat. No more than 6 inches. So it looks like when I get that cut off and I stand this vertical, we'll be right within the 6-inch spec. So that should be good there. So let me get this pulled back out, get these cut off about 1 inch at the bottom, and then I'll be back and we'll go further from there. Always go ahead and get your rule book, guys, when installing a roll cage like this, because it is very important, especially if you're going to race at any kind of large tracks, that this thing is put in correctly. Because to be certified, everything has to be put in correctly. So I got one side welded in. I've still got the weld passenger side in. I've got it spot welded, but I made sure all my angles were correct. The rules are a little fuzzy on the floor plates. I bent mine into 90 degrees. That way I could connect them to the floor and the step up for the rear seat. Especially since we rear half the car with the Fox body stuff, I figured it would help tie it together better. So let me flip it around. I'll show you where I'm at, what I got to do, go from there. So we got our bar weld to our plate weld to the floor, and that is the 6x6 plate specified in the rule book. The rule book don't say you can't bend it or move it around any, so we'll just have to see what happens there. I found a floor plug. I welded it in because there's no way you can bolt it in with the way the plate oversects the floor there. So I got to do the other side over there, get it welded in, and then I'll be back, guys. Alright, I'm working on my rear down bars, and it's hard for me to film notching this tube and fitting it up and actually doing it, but I've got our welds in there, got it fully welded all the way around. You can actually get in there, it's just super tight up in there. I've got my down bar back here is tied into the frame rail, which is right here. So we're tied into the frame back here, and I did run this a little further back than I normally would, because I said before I wanted to put the battery right here, but I would rather have the roll cage tied into our frame joint right there. So that's what I done. I got to repeat the same thing on this side. I've done cut our tube. I've done ground out our square. I got to spray some weld through primer on that and on the bottom side of that plate. Get that plate welded in there. Then I can put this tube up in there and weld it in fully on that side and fully all the way around, just like I did over here. And I did cut 100% of the package tray out of the car, because even though this roll cage kit is for a coupe, the bars aren't bent to go through the coupe rear package tray. Fastback car, you'd be great. You got plenty of room. Work perfect. But this was specifically for a coupe. So I just went ahead and cut the whole package tray out of it. It was rough, bent up, rusty. I'm going to have to build a rear firewall anyway, so, you know, it's no loss. So I got to get this other bar in here. I'll get it welded in, and then I'll be back. Alright, so it's the next day, and I went ahead and put the cross support bar in there, which is the bar that you mount your harnesses on. It also strengthens the main hoop. So let me flip around and I'll show you where I'm at. I'll talk about some specs that you have to have when you do this. Got our support bar in. This bar cannot be above your shoulders, and it cannot be below 4 inches below your shoulders. So what I've done, I marked the seat up, marked the bar right here. And this is about 3.5 inches, and it puts it down about to cut out the seat over there for the harness to come through. So all I have to do from there is weld some tabs on, and our support brace for our seat itself's got to go on there. But right now I'm working on our main hoop support bars, and a lot of time on the unibody car, people tie these into the transmission tunnel. I'm going to tie these into the well, not the roll cage, but the subframe connectors themselves. So I've been working on modifying those. I've got the passenger side one mocked up. I'm fixing to weld it in. We'll go down there at the bottom and I'll show you that. So I know it's kind of dark in here, but I've got our subframe connector mocked up. I got them ready to weld in. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to buzz those in kind of temporarily. Well, I'm not going to take them back out, but I'm going to weld them in there enough where I can weld the support bar to it. And when I get the car back a roller, I'll put it on the ground, I'll roll it down there to the lift, and I'll finish welding them in. But it just seemed like the best way I could do it. So, after I get these welded in, I'm going to have to cut a small hole in the floor, enough where I can get our cross support bar in. When I get that point, I'll be back. Alright, and I got our bar in. I shortened our bar and cut the angle for a subframe connector down there. I split this floor open, peeled it back, weld this bar to our subframe connector down here. You can see where it comes through the floor. It's welded to the frame connector. And then I fold our floor back down and I weld our floor to the bar also, just to try to make a stronger, more rigid connection. It would have been much easier just weld to the transmission tunnel with a 6x6 plate. But this should be a ton stronger this way, and it does tie our subframes into our roll cage instead of our cage just being welded to the floor by a 6x6 plate. So now I've got to replicate this on the other side, which means I've got to modify a subframe connector. I got to notch these bars, I got to cut them down, and then I got to get it all welded in place, at least subframe connector, at least what I can weld with it on the ground. And that's where the fun really begins, guys, because a few seconds for you sometimes is 2 to 3 hours plus for me. So let me get to it and get this other bar in. We move on to the halo hoop up top and the door bars. Well, what I done, I just cut the end of the subframe connector off where it connected to the leaf spring. Made me 2 tabs that slide up bottom of the Fox body torque box and the rear Fox body frame rail, which are dead in line with the factory Mustang ones, by the way. And then, just like I did the other side, I jacked it up with jack. It's a super tight fit in the back, so I took a hammer and I tapped it with a floor jack until it went up and fit snug. Welded it in what I can get to laying on the floor. We will address the rest of it later. So at this point, we need to drill our hole through our floor to our frame connector, get that all split open, so we can cut off our next tube for our subframe support, tying it to the main hoop. So let's get to that. So guys, got our hole cut, so let me flip it around. So as you can see, I just split the floor. I wire brush frame connector off right there. That's where we're going to weld our pipe, and then I'll lay this back down around it and stitch it up. So we're going from there to up here, just like we did over there, from there to there. It's important to note, you have to weld all the way around. They'll weld the floor to it too, just for giggles, and makes it easier to kind of seal it off there. So let's get that pipe cut. Get that support bar welded in, get the floor patched up around it, and get it welded to subframe down below. So from this point, one might start going for door bars. We're not going to put door bars in yet because we need to get our halo hoop, which is our front roof bar, in. And then we can work on getting the door, the A-pillar bars down, and figuring out where our plates are going to be in our floor. And that's what our door bars will tie into. So let me get to mocking that thing up and seeing what we got to do. This is not a fun job, guys. It never is. Generally, at this point, I would stop and put the door bars in it, and you would have a 6-point roll cage. But as far as this car's been cutting apart and what I plan for it in the future, we need to go ahead and get a good roll cage in this car, even at the weight penalties. So also got to decide if I'm going to leave dash in or not, because it's going to be pretty much useless other than just hanging out and being there. So got those decisions to make too. So let me get the roof bar mocked up and figure out where I'm going to have to cut it off and notch it and all that good stuff, and then I'll be back, guys. And alright, it's the next day, and I did decide to go ahead and just remove the dash assembly. I cut it out in a fashion that if I wanted to put it back in, I could. So we're going to go right into a time lapse of that, and then I'll be back. So I got the dash out, and no surprise, this thing, I don't know why it looks the color it does on the camera, but this thing looks pink. Still looks pink. Lots of pink looking stuff in this car. But the bottom dash full Bondo, you can see that down there. So I'd assume that's probably why they painted it other than what it was before. It looks like it was painted black at one time. But this is all the hidden crusty stuff in your car if you don't get all the stuff out of it. You can see their Bondo poking through in places. This would make a good dash patch panel for somebody, or you know, switch areas. Or the whole driver's side of the dash is good. It's just this passenger side lower that's full of filler. But got it out. I got our roof bar in there. So what I need to work on now is getting our A-pillar bars in, getting our plates welded to the floors down here, and trying to get some of this stuff cleaned up a little bit in here. But I need to get those plates put in the floor, which means I need to mock these up. So let's get to that. And alright, so I got the floor plate welded in. I've got our bar notched. So I've got it mocked up. I'll flip around and show it to you. Now I'll go back in there and I'll burn this thing in. And then we'll just have to match the other side. And then we can work on putting in the dash bar at the bottom. So I got our bar mocked up. I got it held in with the magnet. Got it notched up here. Got it tapered down there. I got it where I got it pretty straight. This bar can go either way. You can have the bend down here. You can have the bend up here almost at the top of the dash area. So got it in right there. So I'm going to get it welded up. So we got our bar welded in. I got the gusset up there in the top corner. Anytime you can't weld more than 80% of a bar like that, like it being up against the roof, you need to gusset it. So I got this side in. I just need to replicate it over here. I've already got our floor ground down, our plate spray with some weld-through primer. I'm fixing to buzz that in here in just a few minutes. And then I'll get to mocking that bar up. And wash, rinse, repeat, guys. You know, this is something that takes a bunch of time and a bunch of concentration, because you want these pipes to fit together as tight as you can possibly make them, and not have to weld up any gaps or add any kind of filler material to them, because technically it will not pass tech if you do that kind of stuff. So I'm working along, trying to make sure my pipes fit as tight as I can at the angles that match. That way it looks right from the exterior of the car. And trying to do it in the strongest manner possible. I'm still debating if I want to add rocker bars to this car. If I do, I'll have to go get some pipe. But I need to get these windshield down bars in there, or A-pillar bars. In the rule books, they refer to these bars as A, B, C, and D, and you know, E, and stuff like that. But I need to get the other down bar in it up here. And then we can start working on the dash bar. And once it's in there, we can start getting the door bars in it. So mega time consuming process. That's why this video is over a series of several days. And alright, I got the dash bar in. I put in the position where I can put my front subframe bars and tie them right into it in a good position and clear the cowl. So be coming through right there. And about the same on the other side, where that cowl lumps up, and should have plenty of clearance for our tube to come through there. So got it fully welded in, it's level. So our next thing we need to start working on is these door bars. So that means I'm going to have to put the seat back in it, get the driver's side door bar in first. Then we can put our passenger side in on the same matching angle. And then we can come in here and cut them for the door swing out. And after a bunch of headache, I got the door bars in. I didn't really like the height they're at above the door sill, but to fall within the specs and the rule book, that's exactly where I had to be. So I got both sides in. They're both on the same angle at the same height. Got our bottom welded in and gusseted also. So at this point, we're pretty much ready to put the swing out door bar kit in it. And this has been a bunch of welding, guys, and a bunch of climbing around stuff. A bunch of not fun stuff. And there's a lot more of that not fun stuff to come, because we still got to put the front subframe bars in it when they come. We'll still have to get all the inside of this car cleaned up and painted and seam sealed. And there's still stuff to weld to the cage, like the harness belt tabs and all that good stuff. And I really got to see if I need to put the rocker bars in this car or not. So I need to reach out to a tech guy and make sure everything's kind of kosher at this point before I get too gun-ho and wild, just to make sure everything is good. And alright guys, I didn't video me putting these in, but what happens is these are supposed to slide into the tubes with a little cleanup work. So got them in there, got our swing outs in there, pull the pin, our bar swings out, we put it back in, put our pin back in, and everything works like it's supposed to. So, success. Oh, did you finally decide to come out for this video, Daisy? Huh? Everybody's gonna be wondering where you at. Want to remind them about your t-shirts and their shirts and stuff in our merchandise store? Good baby. Huh? So alright guys, I started this on like Thursday morning. So it is currently Sunday and it's like 7 o'clock at night. I have literally just finished up. When I touched that pin to pull that door bar out, show y'all how it opened, yeah, it was hot. So the welds haven't even cooled down at this point. But our main part of the cage is in the car. Like I said earlier in the video, I'm still waiting on my subframe bars for the front. And that will be in a later video, along with seam sealing this floor pan, getting everything else up, cleaned up in here and painted. And there's still a ton of work to do, guys, but we're getting a lot closer to having this car where we can make it a roller. So just one more thing off that checklist, and you know, that's why you eat elephant. You eat it one bite at a time. Alright guys, you're too cheap to buy LMR. Too cheap to buy it from CJ Pony Parts. Or any of the reputable manufacturers of these torque box reinforcement plates for your 79 through 93 Mustang. Well, you're going to receive a box with some very vague instructions and some very crappy pictures. All kidding aside guys, these are the same plates all these marked up manufacturers sell. Except you can buy these for like 40 bucks on eBay. These are your torque box reinforcement plates for your lowers and your uppers. I went in here and I sprayed some paint on these just to keep them rusting. They do come bare metal. But if you're new to my channel and you're wanting to know how to put your torque box reinforcement plates in your Fox body, be well assured this 66 Mustang Coupe we are using as a test car here to fit these up does have a Fox body rear floor pan in it. And a Fox body 8.8. So to start out guys, what you're going to do, you need to pull the rear end out of your car and the upper and lower control arms. Clean these areas up under the car, go ahead and paint those and let it dry while you're dealing with your other stuff that's in your box. Also come in here, removed all the sound deadening, and in the areas with the upper torque boxes, I went ahead and ground paint off and sprayed some epoxy on it. Also come in here and spray some paint on all these pieces. So with the vague instructions guys, you're not going to know how this stuff installs, and you're going to scratch some paint off and stuff along the ways. But let me show you the easy way to identify this stuff. So what you're going to get other than some super vague instructions, this right here, guys, your left hand, this will be the bottom of the car where your patrol arm mounts. This moon shape, as you can see, I got this marked left. This goes in there like this. The right hand side, the moon shape's opposite, goes in there like this. And believe it or not, the fitment on these is pretty good. These will be the inside of the car pieces, and as you can see, I think we're going to have an issue there. But it is this sheet steel, and we can bend it. These are going to be your lowers. These will go in through the inside of the bottom, and these are your floor plates. And then you got a bag of random bolts that you'll have to figure out what fits in what hole. So, being cheap sometimes pays off, guys. Like I said, this is the exact same stuff all these big companies rebox and sell. It is decent quality, decent thickness stuff, and it'll work just fine in my project. So let's get into how you're going to mark your upper torque box reinforcement holes. We're going to start with it because I've already went in here and drilled holes because I had to figure out where all this stuff actually went. So after you get the rear end of your car and get this cleaned up in here and some paint sprayed on it, you should be in this position. These holes are not going to be there. These upper holes right here are already here, and they're in these locations right here. So once you figure out what's the right side, you're going to take your plates up here, and you're going to take you a paint marker, and you stick it in your holes. Got your holes. Now you know where these two go. These are already here. So what I done, I took a very long sharp punch and run it through these two upper holes, punched a hole through the upper floor pan where I knew where they come through. These do need to be straight up and down, guys. Vertical. So when you take your punch, that floor in there is not flat, so you want to hold it up and punch it through. I repeat this process on the other side over here, as you can see. So these are going to be pretty easy to install from this point on. So after I had my holes marked, I took a 1/4 inch drill bit, drilled these holes through. The two that are non-existing. The two punched holes were already there in the floor. So what I done from that point, I took a unibit, also known as a step bit. I cleaned up the two upper holes. These need to be a little larger than 1/2 inch in diameter. So after I cleaned up the top holes, I went down here to the secondary holes and I drilled them out to a 1/2 inch diameter. And I took the unibit and I kind of just cleaned up the edges around. Come in here, sprayed the paint, and here we are. So guys, this is not a one-person job. You will need a friend to help you when you get to the point of these plates. And I will take and spray some more paint on these before we install them. But what happens is these plates go in there on this side. You will have to drill the two bottom holes through this too. So you're going to pretty much have to get your plate up in there, bolt it in with the two top holes, go back to the bottom, use your 1/4 inch bit, drill through this plate once more, then use your unibit or a 1/2 inch drill bit to drill through this so your bolts pass through the floor. So guys, these are not overly hard to install. If you got a good set of drill bits, a good drill. And like I said, if you don't get a long punch, if you don't have a long punch, you can take a long Phillips head screwdriver, punch it right through that Fox body floor pan because they're made of paper. And that is part of the reason why these floor pans get stress tears. And you do have torque box problems from time to time with high-powered stick shift car. So at this point, I'm ready to get my two upper bolts. I'm going to take my bottom plate, hold it up there, put those two bolts up through the floor, and I'll be ready to fit my upper plate. These spacers they send will go on there to correct the bolt hole angle to these plates. And then you'll have your nut that bolts on top. Once you get all that stuff bolted up, you can drill your bottom holes back through, all the way through this top plate. So at this point, you've already dug all your hardware out, and you figure out they didn't send no washers for the big bolts that go through the floor, through the upper torque box. Guys, go to the hardware store, get you some washers, put on the bottom side of these. It will make a much stronger connection point. Just in case it does actually try to rip out, you will have more contact area of that head through that plate where everything's sandwiched together, and you will have a stronger joint. And if you're like me and you don't have no friends that show up when you need help, but when you need help, you're there for them, you can take one of these weld magnets right here, like this one I got at Harbor Freight. This has a 90-pound pull force. Put it over your bolt holes for your lower bolts. And when you stick all this stuff in there, these will stick to the magnet. You can pull the magnet up through the floor, and then you can hold the bolts to get your plates in. And it's a little while later, and I did manage to get those bolts in by myself, by some miracle. Unfortunately, the plates that bolt to the floor are nowhere near matching the contour of the floor, either one of them. So you will have to beat and bang and do things that you normally wouldn't have to do to get to sit flat on the floor. I can't speak for the quality of the better ones, but you know, the bolt holes are there, guys. I mean, it's just been in the plate at this point. So I'll flip it around. I'll end up welding mine in on top and bottom, along with bolting them in also. I wanted a super strong fix, so to say, or a problem prevention in this case. And I'll show you why you really want to put some kind of torque box supports in these cars. They are known for the floor pans to crack and them tear spot welds out of them, like I said in the beginning, with high horsepower stuff or a stick shift car. So let me flip it around. So I got that one in there. I got some paint sprayed on it because I'm going to let it dry. I started on the bottom stuff down here. We'll get into that here in just a minute. But when I cleaned all the insulation off this floor, this thing had a big old tear right there in the floor pan and transmission tunnel. As far as I could tell, this was a completely stock car just come out of. But they're known to start having tears in random spots in the floors. So you want to clean all that stuff up good, guys. You want to inspect it. And if you get a welder, you need to address that stuff while you're in here doing this kind of stuff. So let's move on to the bottom stuff. And these are pretty simple too, guys. They're pretty much the same kind of theory. You can see this bottom hole is offset. These will only go on one side. There's not enough room in the torque box to put this one on the driver's side. And when you get it in there, you're going to have one bolt hole line up with that rubber plug hole. So one thing I am going to do before I permanently mount these in the car or even start drilling holes, I am going to open this hole up right here to the next size larger, because it's very tight on the factory bolt, and I think by the time it gets sandwiched to the floor and pulls up or moves around, they may be enough interference that this don't fit well and you won't be able to get your bolt through it. So look for these kind of problems, guys, and address them before they become an issue. Like I said, I knew the floor plates weren't going to bolt on and sit flat. I showed you in the beginning that they weren't even bent the same shape. It's just one of those things you're going to have to work with. You may have to even split the plate and weld it back together, and that's what I had to do on the driver's side. But that's ultimately why I decided to go ahead and just weld it to the floor. And I will weld the front reinforcements to the floor also. It just makes a stronger joint, even though it's bolted together. If you weld on top and bottom after you bolt together, it's going to take an act of Congress to rip all this stuff out. So guys, these things are pretty easy to get in here, and you get kind of scared when you see that this has to go in this hole and you realize it won't, but you can literally just walk it up in there. And you do need to pay attention to that hole offset like I told you. What I'll do, I'll take a stock bolt, put it in there like that. So what I done, I opened that hole up, make size bigger, that way when this is pushed up against the floor, it won't bind this bolt up that goes through. So once you get it up in there like that, I'll take a pair of open channel C-clamps, or one of them, and I'll clamp it right here to hold that plate up tight to the floor. And then you're going to drill your holes from down here at the bottom upward. And alternately, you can clamp it in, use your long punch the holes, drill them from the top side, and it'll make it a ton easier. After this point, I went ahead and finished up both sides, so I will flip it around and I'll show you what the end result looks like. I went ahead and fully welded everything in, and I know this isn't a comprehensive install of these, but for, you know, 40 something bucks, guys, they work. They're just like the ones that are high dollar and more expensive, and with a little fumbling and fiddling, you can get them mounted. So as you can see, we got those 4 bolts in there. I welded the plate in, got the other side in there over there, got it all welded up over there and over here. Then I'd come down here at the bottom. I'd welded them in down there, which I know you can't see because it's dark, but they're welded in on the bottom and they're welded in on the top, and that should give us some good reinforcement. So guys, I think it brings us to about the end of this video. So make sure you check out our friends over at Kentucky Mustang. I'll drop a link to their website down below in the description, along with the discount code that they sent us, and I'll also drop it right here on the screen. So make sure you check those out. Help those that help support us. So if you like these kind of videos, make sure you like this video, share them with your friends. If you're not a subscriber, make sure you hit that subscribe button. It's absolutely free, and it does help support the channel and helps us grow and brings you more content like this. If you are a subscriber, I greatly appreciate you guys, and I look forward to everybody's comments down below. So until the next video, thanks for watching, and I'll see you at the next one.